In the year 1524, when the banners of Spain first cast their shadows over the golden temples of the Mexica and the sun-burnished fortresses of the Inca, a strange law was born deep in the heart of the New World. Among the Nahua kingdoms, a council of priestesses decreed that no man should again lift voice or hand in sacred ritual. The ceremonies of fire, rain, and blood, once shared by kings and their priests, were henceforth to be guarded by women alone. The reason, whispered in hushed tones, was fear. Too many lords, the priestesses claimed, had used the gods as masks for their own ambition. They had called for sacrifices not in honor of the divine, but to tighten their grip on throne and people. So the law was carved upon obsidian tablets. Only women may walk the holy steps. Only women may open the gates of spirit. At first many accepted. The people bowed, and the queens of the temples rose in splendor, clad in feathers and jade. Yet beneath this new order, anger brewed. The warrior castes, men trained from birth to fight, to bleed, to conquer, now found themselves shunned from the very altars that blessed their wars. They could shed blood in battle, but never in ritual. They could take cities, but never pray for their souls. Thus began the division. Women who claimed the gods spoke only through them, and men who vowed that strength itself was the purest form of worship. In the taverns of Tenochtitlan and the high courts of Cusco, whispers spread like smoke. The law of silence will break the people. The gods will not endure it long. And in the distance, across the seas, armored knights of Spain sharpened their swords and raised their crosses, ready to take advantage of a world already splitting itself apart. From the law of silence rose a new brotherhood, though not of priests. They called themselves the Knights of the Feathered Crown, a company of men sworn to reclaim their place before the gods. They dressed in iron where they could, leather where they must, and upon their helms they fixed the long plumes of the quetzal, shimmering like emerald fire. Their oath was spoken beneath the moon, in a ruined temple barred to them by the priestesses. If the gods deny us voice, then let our swords speak in their stead. If the altars are closed, then let the battlefield be our chapel. They fashioned banners of obsidian and crimson, their law written in blood rather than stone. To them, war was no longer just a duty of tribe or king. It became a holy act, a proof of worth. The women of the temples, however, did not yield. They gathered in their sanctuaries, building high walls about their shrines, carved with sacred glyphs and guarded by loyal clans. To them, the Knights of the Feathered Crown were not heroes but heretics, men who mistook violence for virtue. This division spread like a crack through every kingdom. Some lords backed the priestesses, fearing the wrath of the gods. Others fed the knights, gifting them steel smuggled from Spanish caravels. In every marketplace, men argued with women. In every palace, whispers of conspiracy gnawed at loyalty. By 1528, the continent was no longer one of empires, but of camps. The sanctuaries of spirit, ruled by the priestesses, and the brotherhoods of war, sworn to the feathered crown. And when Hernán Cortés heard of this quarrel, he wrote to the King of Spain with a cunning smile, "The land is not won, but broken, and where men and women battle one another for heaven itself, there we may plant the cross and claim the crown." The spark came not in a great city, but in a village by Lake Texcoco. There, a band of Knights of the Feathered Crown stormed a temple where the priestesses kept vigil. They carried no siege engines, only clubs and blades, but their fury was a weapon of its own. They broke the temple gates, seized the offerings of maize and incense, and shouted before the altar, "If we cannot kneel here as sons of the gods, then no woman shall stand here as their daughter." The priestesses, unarmed but unafraid, cursed them with chants and struck their faces with burning coals. Yet the knights prevailed, and the shrine was set ablaze. Its flames could be seen from the causeways of Tenochtitlan. When dawn came, smoke still choked the air, and the people gathered in horror. Mothers wept, warriors sharpened their obsidian blades, and the elders of the council declared the knights traitors to heaven. Yet in secret, many men nodded with grim pride, saying, "At last, the gods have heard us." The priestesses answered swiftly, "From the high temple, They rang the copper bells and called their followers to arms. Women and their loyal clans built barricades in the streets, vowing to protect the sanctuaries with their lives. They carried banners of white, embroidered with the sun, declaring their fight holy. Thus the city became a battlefield of kin against kin. Brothers stood against sisters, husbands against wives. Blood stained the canals, and for the first time since the fall of the Mexica emperor, the land tasted civil war. And beyond the horizon, Spanish galleons drifted closer, their sails like the wings of carrion birds. They saw the rising smoke and knew the time had come. The smoke of civil war rose high, and with it came the Spaniards. Hernán Cortés, cunning as ever, rode at the head of armored horsemen. Behind him marched priests bearing the cross, and soldiers clutching muskets that cracked like thunder. He did not stride first to the priestesses' sanctuaries, for he knew their strength lay in unity and spirit. Instead, he sought out the feathered crown, men already estranged from their temples, hungry for vengeance and recognition. On the shores of Veracruz he met their captains. They stood proud, cloaked in quetzal plumes, their obsidian swords gleaming in the sun. The air bristled with mistrust, yet the promise of alliance was too tempting to ignore. Cortés spoke thus, his words flowing like honey. You fight for honor, yet your women deny you. You thirst for the gods, yet the temples are barred. Stand with Spain, and I will grant you what your own priestesses refuse, the right to build your own altars, and to rule as knights beneath the cross. Help us break the sanctuaries, and you shall have steel, horses, and glory. The captains hesitated. They were wary of foreign kings and strange gods. But when Cortés displayed a chest of Spanish swords, sharper than any obsidian, their eyes betrayed desire. And so they clasped hands in a vow of war, a pact sealed not with parchment, but with broken spears thrust into the earth. Thus, the feathered crown gained muskets and steel, and Spain gained a host of native warriors bound by fury. When word of this pact reached the sanctuaries, the priestesses gathered in their holy chambers, their faces painted with ash. One spoke, her voice cold as stone. The men have given themselves to strangers. They no longer serve the gods of our blood, but the crowns of across the sea. Their souls are forfeit, and we must save the land from them, even if it means fire and death. And so the war sharpened. Not merely man against woman, but Spain against the spirits of the old world. The first great clash came at the Sanctuary of the Moon, a fortress of stone and white stucco rising above the lake, where the priestesses had kept their strongest relics, obsidian mirrors said to hold the faces of the gods. Its walls were high, crowned with battlements, and guarded by women warriors who wore jaguar skins and carried spears tipped with flint. The feathered crown came at dawn, their quetzal plumes rippling, their new Spanish allies beside them. Muskets cracked, horses thundered across the causeways, and steel swords cut deeper than any native blade. Yet the defenders did not falter. From the walls, the priestesses hurled burning jars of pitch, and the jaguar women fought with a frenzy that turned the causeways red. 3 days the battle raged. The knights fought with vows of honor on their lips, swearing never to retreat until the sanctuary fell. The women within swore the opposite, never to yield, even if the last stone was blackened and the last voice silenced. On the 4th day, Cortés ordered cannon to be dragged onto barges. Their roar shook the lake, and the sanctuary of the moon trembled. Towers cracked, walls shattered. The defenders sang their death hymns, voices carrying across the water even as fire consumed their stronghold. When at last the gates fell, the Spaniards stormed inside, but the knights of the feathered crown were first to enter. They rushed to the sacred altar, seizing the obsidian mirrors. Yet as one knight lifted a mirror high, it slipped from his hand and shattered upon the stones. The women's last curse echoed, "May your strength devour itself. May your swords drink only your own blood." The sanctuary was ash. Victory belonged to the feathered crown, yet the triumph was poisoned. For the people who watched from afar whispered, "If even the moon sanctuary can fall, then no temple is safe, no god unshaken." And in the south, word reached the ears of the Inca. Tales of women burned in their temples, of men wielding thunder weapons, of strangers with crosses commanding them both. The Sapa Inca's council grew restless, fearing the same storm might soon roll over the Andes. After the fall of the moon sanctuary, the land burned not only with fire but with outrage. Across the city-states of the valley, clans loyal to the priestesses rallied under banners of gold and white, declaring themselves sun-blessed, chosen to carry the gods' vengeance. The feathered crown, now armed with muskets and horses, rode through villages demanding allegiance. Those who refused were cut down swiftly. Those who resisted with cunning found themselves beset by spies and traitors among their own families. Yet the sun-blessed clans did not bend. They struck at night, ambushing supply convoys, setting fire to causeways, and freeing captives taken by the knights. Among the priestesses, a council of the eldest met in secret, planning what they called the rite of reckoning. They gathered sacred relics, mirrors, obsidian daggers, and ceremonial feathers, and sent envoys to tribes far and wide. Their message was simple. He who bows to steal over spirit shall fall. Rise, children of the sun, and reclaim what is ours by birthright. Men of the feathered crown, though sworn to honor, found themselves fighting neighbors, cousins, and even former brothers in arms who could not abide the desecration of temples. Fractures appeared within their ranks. Some whispered that their pact with Spain, once golden, now felt like chains. Others plotted to seize power for themselves, dreaming of a new kingdom carved from chaos. The valley became a labyrinth of war. Bridges destroyed, temples burned, and secret passages hidden beneath the canals. Every clash left the land more bitter, every victory hollow. It was clear to all. The continent's future would not be decided by Spanish steel alone, nor by native fire alone, but by the hearts willing to fight for their vision of honor, power, and the gods themselves. And so the sun-blessed clans began their march toward the feathered crown's stronghold, setting the stage for a confrontation that would decide who ruled not just the cities, but the spirit of the land itself. Before the sun-blessed clans could reach the feathered crown's fortress, treachery struck from within. Among the knights, ambition had quietly festered. Captain Tezcatl, a man once loyal to the feathered crown, grew restless under the pact with Spain. He saw opportunity in the chaos, a chance to claim not only the spoils of battle but the power of the gods themselves. One moonless night, Tezcatl met in secret with a faction of disillusioned warriors. They plotted to open the fortress gates at dawn for the sun-blessed clans, promising to share dominion over the city once the priestess's power was broken. But fate has its own cunning. A young knight, Ixcotl, discovered the plot while delivering messages to the outer walls. Heart-pounding, he rode through the night, warning the commanders of the fortress. By dawn, the betrayal was known, and the gates of Tlaltecutli's stronghold were sealed tighter than ever. When the sun-blessed clans arrived, they found themselves facing not only fortified walls but a city prepared for siege. Arrows rained down, and the clamor of drums and conch shells echoed through the streets. The knights, aware of their own fragile loyalty, fought with desperation, forming lines of steel and obsidian, horsemen charging like thunder across the bridges. Yet even in victory, suspicion festered. Every shadowed corridor, every fallen comrade, reminded the feathered crown that the greatest threat might come not from the priestesses outside, but from men within. Meanwhile, the priestesses, watching from their hidden sanctuaries, whispered prayers and curses alike, weaving magic into the wind. They knew the fortress would not hold forever, but neither would the knights survive their own divided hearts. And so, the stage was set for a battle that would test courage, loyalty, and the will of the gods themselves. As the siege stretched into its third week, the battle transformed from steel against steel into a war of spirits. The priestesses, no longer content to merely defend, called upon the old powers of the land. From hidden shrines, they summoned rains that turned causeways to mud, winds that snatched banners from the knights' hands, and fires that leapt unnaturally along the canals. The feathered crown responded with equal cunning. They rode through the streets with Spanish muskets and captured sacred idols, smashing them to prove the gods powerless. They erected makeshift towers along the causeways, firing from above and striking the priestesses' warriors with terrifying precision. The air trembled with smoke, fire, and the clash of obsidian against steel. In the heart of the fortress, the eldest priestess, Citlali, performed the rite of the twin flames, a ritual meant to summon visions of past kings and queens, hoping to inspire her warriors and strike fear into the nights. The sky above the city darkened unnaturally, and some say the stars themselves blinked in fear. Yet the knights held fast. They believed their honor, their courage, and their alliance with Spain could withstand even the wrath of the spirits. Captain Tezcatl, now fully embracing his ambition, led a daring sortie to burn one of the priestesses' hidden sanctuaries, hoping to shatter their morale. But as the flames licked the sacred stones, a voice rang out, echoing like 1,000 drums. "Your swords may burn our walls, but the spirits of the land cannot be slain." The soldiers hesitated. Some faltered, sensing the weight of power beyond their understanding. Others charged with reckless fury, determined to claim victory or death. By nightfall, the city was a battlefield not just of men and women, but of gods and mortals, spirit and steel, fire and feather. And every soul within the walls knew that the coming dawn would bring either salvation or ruin. As dawn broke over the shattered causeways, the priestesses unveiled their most feared weapon, the hidden serpent. It was not a beast of flesh, but a creation of spirit and earth, a massive construct of obsidian and jade, imbued with the power of their sacred chants. Its body coiled through the canals, scales glinting with an unnatural light, and its eyes burned like molten gold. The knights recoiled, their muskets useless against such a creature. Horses refused to cross the bridges, and men cried out in terror as the serpent's head struck the walls, shattering stone and timber alike. Flames rose where its breath touched, yet water from the canals hissed and steamed, leaving the serpent unharmed. Captain Tezcatl, determined to seize glory, rallied a company of the bravest knights. They struck at the serpent with swords and spears, but each blow met resistance as if striking against the will of the gods themselves. Even the Spanish allies, accustomed to fearsome beasts in the New World, stepped back in awe and dread. The priestesses, chanting in unison atop the remaining towers, guided the serpent with their voices. It became more than a weapon. It was a symbol, a living embodiment of their power and the sacred law that had divided the land. Yet the feathered crown, though shaken, refused to yield. They regrouped behind barricades, calling upon every ounce of courage, loyalty, and cunning. They knew that if the serpent destroyed the fortress, not only would their cause be lost, but the very hope of men reclaiming their place before the gods would vanish forever. And so, the battle reached a terrifying impasse. A serpent of spirit and stone against knights of steel and oath, each side bound by honor, fury, and destiny. The feathered crown, battered and trembling before the hidden serpent, resolved that no spirit-born creature would decide their fate. Captain Tezcatl, despite his ambition and past betrayals, knew that this was the moment to prove the worth of men before gods, women, and Spaniards alike. Under the cover of night, the knights forged a plan. They gathered the heaviest Spanish cannon, hidden beneath hastily built scaffolds, and waited for the serpent to coil near the main bridge. A company of mounted knights lured it with firebrands, leading it into the trap. As the serpent struck, they released the cannon. The blast thundered through the city, shaking the walls, and a piece of the creature's obsidian flank cracked. Sparks and shards rained down, but the serpent roared in fury, undeterred. Yet the damage was enough. The priest's chants faltered for the first time, and the serpent paused, confused by the mortal assault. Seizing the moment, Tezcatl led a charge. Knights leapt from bridges, swords raised high, clashing against the spirit-imbued scales. The battle was chaotic. Men screaming, steel striking stone, the river boiling beneath. Some knights fell, swallowed by the serpent's coils, while others found weak points in its form, plunging blades deep into the gaps between scales. The priestesses screamed, their voices weaving spells of protection and retaliation, but each strike of the knights chipped away at their magic. Lali herself, atop the main tower, fell to her knees, exhausted by the strain of controlling such a force. By dawn, the serpent lay shattered, half buried in the canal, and the fortress was smoke-streaked but still standing. The knights had survived, battered and scarred, their honor reaffirmed in the eyes of men and gods alike. Yet even in victory, the air was thick with unease. Many knew the war was far from over. For every spirit fallen, another might rise, and the law that had divided the land still stood, unbroken, unyielding, and unforgiving. With the hidden serpent destroyed and the fortress still in their grasp, the feathered crown claimed victory, but victory brought little peace. The knights, weary and bloodied, gathered within the walls and debated what should come next. Some urged expansion, others cautioned restraint. It was Tezcatl who proposed a new order, a council of knights bound not just by oath, but by law and ritual, to govern the conquered lands and enforce the honor of men. Thus the Obsidian Court was born. Its members swore solemn vows beneath the sun, pledging to protect their brethren, enforce justice, and reclaim temples from any who defied their rule. Their hall was carved from black stone, adorned with the feathers of fallen foes and trophies of war, a grim reminder that power was both prize and responsibility. Yet the priestesses, humiliated but unbroken, retreated to hidden sanctuaries. Led by Lali's surviving sisters, they whispered of vengeance and dark rites, seeking allies among distant clans who had yet to bow to either men or Spaniards. In secret, they began to weave a spell unlike any before, a binding of spirits so powerful that even the Obsidian Court might tremble. Across the valley, villages watched nervously. Families had been split, bridges burned, and loyalties tested. Whispers spread of knights who wielded steel like the gods, and women whose voices could summon fire from water. Fear and admiration danced together, for all knew that neither side could be easily defeated. And so the land entered a tenuous calm, a fragile order imposed by knights of iron and oath, shadowed by the promise of a reckoning the priestesses were quietly preparing. The stage was set for a final, decisive confrontation, one that would determine whether men, women, or foreign invaders would shape the destiny of the continent. In the hidden sanctuaries, far from the eyes of men, the priestesses convened. Lali, her hair streaked with ash and her robes scorched from battle, stood at the center of a circle of flame. Around her, women from distant clans and conquered villages knelt, each carrying relics of power. Obsidian mirrors, feathered fans, sacred stones carved with ancient glyphs. This land bleeds because men seek glory where only the gods may tread. Lali intoned, her voice echoing through the cavernous chamber. The Obsidian Court believes they hold the valley, but they have only claimed walls and bridges. The spirits still belong to us, and we shall call them forth. They began the rites, slow and deliberate. Chants rose and fell like waves, weaving through the corridors of the earth. From the lakes and rivers, water stirred unnaturally, curling into spirals that whispered like voices of long-dead kings. The winds bent in impossible patterns, carrying the scent of burning sage and iron. As the days passed, word of their gathering spread in whispers. Scouts reported strange lights above the mountains, and travelers spoke of voices calling them from the forests, luring them into shadows. Villagers who had once served the knights began disappearing, some returning with eyes wide and silent, others never returning at all. Lali's plan was clear: strike not just at walls, but at the hearts and minds of men. When the sun-blessed clans had first rebelled, they fought with courage but lacked the means to destroy the knights outright. Now, the priestesses sought something greater, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of the Obsidian Court. And so, while the knights celebrated their fragile order in the fortress of Tlалтecutli's gate, the priestesses gathered in the shadows, weaving a storm that would either reclaim the land or consume them all. The priestesses struck first, under a moon veiled in smoke. From hidden paths and waterways, they advanced silently, carrying torches wrapped in sacred herbs that smoldered with a strange, greenish fire. These flames did not burn like ordinary fire. They left no smoke and could melt steel if held too long. yet they seemed almost alive, writhing as if possessed by spirits. Inside the fortress, the knights slept uneasily, still tense from the siege months before. Some spoke of omens, strange shadows moving along the walls, whispers in the wind that no human could utter. Captain Teskattle, proud and daring, dismissed them, declaring that no magic could overcome steel and honor. But as the night deepened, the torches reached the gates. The walls shook as chants rose in harmony, calling upon the spirits of the lakes, the forests, and the mountains. Guards stumbled, seeing visions of ancestors and gods that froze their hands and hearts. The flames licked at the towers, consuming not stone, but courage, leaving men paralyzed with fear. In the chaos, the priestesses infiltrated the fortress, moving with uncanny grace. They struck silently, incapacitating sentries, untying horses, and freeing captives who had been conscripted by the knights. By dawn, the Obsidian court had suffered its first true defeat, not of steel but of spirit. Teskattle stood at the shattered gates, witnessing his knights falter before power they could not strike. Rage burned in his chest, yet even he could not deny the terror that filled the fortress. The priestesses had returned the valley to uncertainty, and no man, no matter his oath, could predict the shape of the coming war. The Obsidian court, humiliated but unbroken, gathered their remaining strength. Captain Teskattle called a council within the shattered fortress, the walls still blackened from the priestess's night of whispered flames. Knights debated feverishly. Some argued for retreat, others for a swift counterattack. Teskattle, heart-hardened by ambition and pride, declared they would fight, not just with steel, but with strategy. The knights built siege engines atop the surviving towers, reinforced bridges, and trained their muskets on every path leading to the city. They devised traps for the priestesses, hoping to turn spirit against spirit, fire against fire. They sought to rally allies from distant tribes still loyal to men, promising land, wealth, and honor. But the priestesses were already in motion. Citlali, atop a hidden plateau, raised her arms to the heavens. From the forests, rivers, and mountains, the spirits stirred once more. Birds, beasts, and even the wind itself seemed to bend to her command. Fires that had been contained erupted again, unnatural and green, moving like serpents across the causeways. The clash began at dawn. Knights charged with horses and steel, meeting the priestesses' forces in narrow streets and crumbling plazas. Spirits hurled visions into the minds of soldiers, turning courage to hesitation, loyalty to doubt. Some knights turned on one another in panic. Others pressed forward, their oaths of honor burning brighter than fear. For 3 days, the city became a battlefield of earth, flame, steel, and spirit. By the 4th dawn, both sides were exhausted, yet neither yielded. The priestesses held their sanctuaries. The knights maintained the fortress. Each understood that the final act had yet to come, a confrontation that would decide not just victory, but the destiny of the valley itself. At last, the valley trembled beneath the storm of destiny. The priestesses, clad in white and gold, gathered their forces atop the highest temples, chanting in unison, calling upon every spirit of earth, water, and sky. The feathered crown, armored and resolute, assembled on the bridges and causeways, their banners of obsidian and quetzal snapping in the wind. The two armies met at dawn, the sun rising blood-red over the shattered city. Lightning split the sky, whether from storm or the will of the gods, no one could tell. The priestesses unleashed their final power. Torrents of water rose from canals, flames twisted unnaturally from earth, and visions of ancestors charged through the knights' minds. Many faltered, some fleeing, others struck down by their own fear. Yet the knights would not yield. Teskattle, mounted atop a black horse, rode into the heart of the chaos, his sword raised high. Steel rang against obsidian, muskets cracked, and the surviving men fought with a fury born not only of honor but desperation. Every strike was a declaration. Men could claim their right before gods, even if the gods themselves seemed against them. The battle raged until the sun stood high, and when the final clash came at the gates of the moon sanctuary, rebuilt hastily as a symbol of priestly defiance. A single moment decided all. Tezcatl confronted Citlali herself. Blades met, fire and spirit intertwining, until the two leaders, locked in combat, realized the truth. Neither could fully defeat the other without destroying the land itself. In a final act of wisdom and fear, they called a ceasefire. The priests and knights laid down arms, agreeing upon a new order. Men would take part in defense and war, women in ritual and sacred governance. The law of silence was rewritten, not abolished, but balanced. Honor and spirit would now coexist, though always wary, always vigilant. The valley slowly healed. Cities were rebuilt, temples restored, and bridges mended. Yet in every heart lingered the memory of fire and feather, of steel against spirit. And travelers who crossed the lakes whispered of a land where men and women once fought not just for power, but for the very soul of the continent. A medieval America shaped by knights, priestesses, and the unyielding will of the gods. The age of the Obsidian court and the sun-blessed priestesses became legend, a tale passed from generation to generation, reminding all that honor, magic, and destiny are never truly separate, and that the fate of a people is forged in both battle and wisdom.